Power Up Gaming, the only destination you need for retro video games, consoles, and accessories. Want access to exclusive specials? Like us on Facebook.
Good morning, thanks for tuning in. Wanted to do a quick little video to show you something that I did work on in my own time here. Just something I wanted to play around with, have lots of DS Lites kicking around, and saw this online and thought I'd give it a try. It's a relatively easy project. A lot of the sites make it look a lot harder than it actually is. I didn't do a full tutorial only because it's the first one I did and didn't want to screw up on camera for the most part. Still getting into doing videos and didn't want to acknowledge a lot of the mistakes as I went along. Plus, I didn't have the full camera setup that I do now. And a lot of the work wasn't done around my bench, being that there's a lot of spray painting involved or fiberglass work, that kind of thing. But what we actually did was take an old DS, took off the top hinge, removed all the surface, and on this one here I actually took out the DS slot and made it into a Game Boy player, almost like a Game Boy Micro. Took out the extra buttons, on this side here. Took out the extra buttons we didn't need. Touchscreen is still there, even though the functionality is pretty much mute at this point. Just for actually when you first turn on the screen after you've taken out the battery and everything to recenter it, go through the menuing for the DS system to be able to set the default screen to the bottom screen, that kind of thing. You still need the digitizer in there. And yeah, so that's the actual setup. And then what I'll do is I'll zoom into the bench just to give you a closer shot here. It's not perfect, but I'll give you a little bit of details. So I went with white, with lime and white. I think it looks pretty good. There is a black edging around here. Originally I did have white. I screwed up the digitizer and didn't have another DS Lite in white to use. So this one is from a black DS Lite. That's why it has a black surround on it. Few things. I mean, this here is a little mess up on my behalf. What I'll eventually do is actually take this apart. I don't know if you can see from the light there. It's not as smooth as I wanted where I took out the buttons. You can still see a little circle there from the fiberglass work. I used fiberglass, long strand fiberglass. It's completely drawing a blank here. Bondo. Thank you. Long strand fiberglass Bondo to actually cover up all the holes and everything. Works extremely well, but I didn't spend as much time as I should have actually smoothing it out and actually using the finer stuff on the top. And I'll actually fix that up and get it a little smoother looking. This here, funny enough, that's where the LEDs actually sit on the default unit, and they actually sit below the hinge. Wanted to come up with a solution that actually works, and what this is on the front of a Super Nintendo, there's a front joystick port that actually is removable, and if you actually remove the front plastic cover on it, there is an actual diffuser on the LED light. And what I did was grind that down with a Dremel, so it was pretty much just a little nub, and then drilled out the space with a Dremel on the top of the DS through the fiberglass strand that I put on there, the Bondo strand, and drilled it out to the right size and shoved that in there, and it actually diffuses the light very well. Don't know if you can actually see that very well, but it actually diffuses the light very well. And then where's my charger? It's when you're actually charging it. Try and get that shown on camera here. So it actually shows that when the battery's low, it shows the red. So it's just using the default LEDs that are below there, but it actually does display that very well. Speaker wise, it's only mono speaker. The mono speaker is actually just below this spot. The one thing I'm not very happy with is I did use the standard DS speaker. Volume's not very high on it. Right now I just have a multi-cartridge in there, just a Chinese knockoff multi-cartridge. But the speaker volume's not very high. So that's one thing I'd like to try and do differently in the future. I'll just go through. As you can see, the screen Nice display. It's just use a standard DS screen for a Game Boy. But this is volume up all the way. Very, very faint. So I don't know if it's something I did or I'll get it figured out. But we'll get to something very cool. Calaxium. So display-wise, very, very happy with it. Buttons-wise, extremely happy. There's quite a bit of work with once you get the Bondo to actually get the triggers actually in place and actually ground down properly. Because the Bondo, this is where the original hinges are, and that's where the actual triggers sit. So that's probably the hardest part, is getting those all smooth and getting everything lined up perfectly. A little time consuming, not very hard. Other than that is all the tutorials actually had resistors sitting underneath to actually get the LED screen to fire up, because the DS won't fire up unless it has a top LCD screen. The way to bypass that is actually run a resistor. And I'll give you the DigiKey part number for the actual resistor I used. It's a surface mount resistor, fits perfectly between the two solder points, speeds up the process. 10 seconds worth of soldering to get that surface mount resistor on there. Works absolutely perfect. You could technically hook one of these up if you didn't change out the batteries, you weren't worried about the hinges and the overall look of it. You could probably put one of these together easily in about 25-30 minutes if you weren't worried about the overall look of it. If you just wanted one to play Game Boy Advance, you got a broken hinges, you got a DS kicking around, and you just snapped off the top screen or took off the top screen, you could have one in about 25 minutes. Going full out and actually making it look really nice, painting it, getting rid of the extra buttons and everything else. Actual work, not including, watching paint dry and everything else, you're probably looking at about 6 to 7 hours worth of work. So still not a huge amount of time. I could probably do the next one in about half the amount of time I spent on this one. So as you do a few more, you get a lot better at it. So yeah. Any questions, post below. We're going to be getting into a lot more modding. Next one I'm going to be doing is I have an old SpongeBob Game Boy Advance SP, and just going to be swapping out the screen. It's a backlit SP, a 101 backlit SP, and I have an old Game Boy Game Boy Advance original that I'm going to be swapping the screen from that backlit SP into it, just to show you how that's actually done. And it's done with an adapter cable. It's extremely easy. So I'll show you how to do that from beginning to end. I've never personally done one, but I know it's extremely easy, so we'll walk through that together. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, post below. Please subscribe. Thanks.